When we think of migration, we often picture people moving from poorer, developing nations to wealthier, developed ones. But the reality is far more complex. Migration is a global phenomenon, and Westerners are not exempt from this movement. Today, we will challenge some misconceptions and highlight the growing trend of Westerners moving to developing countries for a better life. We will also examine some groups of people who have recently been unwelcome guests across Europe, leaving some to perish on the high seas in pursuit of a good living standard. The media often portrays migration as a one-way street, with people from Africa, Asia, and Latin America moving to the West for better opportunities. But this narrative overlooks the reality that people from developed countries are also moving to the global South, seeking greener pastures, cheaper living, and a better quality of life. In fact, according to the United Nations, over 50 million people from wealthy countries live in developing nations, countries like Mexico, Costa Rica, Thailand, and South Africa. Whether for work, retirement, or lifestyle, Westerners are choosing to leave their high-cost countries and move to places with a lower cost of living and vibrant cultures.
I moved to Thailand with my wife for the affordable healthcare and the relaxed lifestyle. My income goes a lot further here than it would in the US, and the weather is amazing.
I live in Mexico now. I was tired of the high cost of living in Canada. Now I run a small business, and I love the local culture here. It feels like a better fit for my family.
When Westerners move abroad, they're expats, living the dream with their fancy lattes and Instagram-worthy sunsets. They're just here for the experience, right? But when people from developing countries head to the West, suddenly they're immigrants, and it's like they're personally responsible for every problem in the country. They're just trying to survive, but no one's offering them a lifestyle blogger pass. It's crucial to understand that migration isn't a one-way street. While millions move from developing countries to the West, we must also acknowledge the millions who leave wealthier countries to pursue opportunities elsewhere. This shift in migration patterns reshapes economies, cultures, and communities worldwide. Let's shift our focus to Africa. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of global migration is the story of thousands of Africans risking everything for a chance at a better life abroad. Many of them leave their families behind, enduring dangerous journeys with the hope of finding something better. But what exactly drives these people to risk everything, including their lives? In countries like Nigeria, Senegal, and many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, young people face overwhelming challenges. High unemployment rates, economic instability, and limited opportunities force them to consider desperate measures. They dream of a life with better job prospects, higher wages, and access to basic needs like healthcare and education. But the path to those dreams is often treacherous.
I left everything behind, my family, my home, everything. I had no choice. There are no jobs, no future where I'm from. I risked my life because I wanted a better life for my children. I didn't think I'd make it, but I had to try.
Back home in Africa, my family stayed behind. I couldn't provide for them back home. When I heard about others making it to Europe, I thought maybe that could be my chance too. I left with hope, even though I knew how dangerous it was. I didn't have many options. Every year, thousands of Africans risk the deadly journey across the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea to reach Europe. The truth is, they are often running away from systemic issues that have gone unaddressed for years: political instability, corruption, and a lack of opportunity. When you have little to lose, the promise of a better future abroad can feel like your only option.
In countries like Libya, where many African migrants pass through, the government is either too weak to stop the human traffickers or complicit in exploiting the migrants. Worse still, once migrants reach European shores, many end up in overcrowded camps with little hope for a stable future. So, why aren't African governments doing more to stop this mass migration? The reality is complex. Many African governments simply don't have the resources or the political will to create substantial changes. Corruption, political instability, and a lack of sustainable policies to tackle unemployment and poverty have contributed to the exodus. The failure to address these fundamental issues leaves young people with no choice but to embark on these dangerous journeys. Do you have African friends who must send money back home to family members? It's called remittances. That lifeline, that financial bridge across continents, become a double-edged sword. On the surface, it's a heartwarming story of diaspora communities supporting loved ones back home. When people travel, they send back home to help families put food on the table, pay for education, and even start small businesses. But dig a little deeper, and a more complex picture emerges. While remittances provide a vital economic boost, they also highlight a systemic failure. They expose the inability of many African nations to provide their citizens with the opportunities they seek elsewhere. It's a classic catch-22. Governments encourage migration for economic gain, but in doing so, they perpetuate a cycle of dependence. They rely on the very same diaspora communities they often fail to invest in at home. It's also important to note the role of global systems in fueling migration. While aid is often sent to African countries, it doesn't always reach the people who need it most. International policies and trade deals can often exacerbate the problem, keeping economies dependent and vulnerable. Africa's development has been hindered by a lack of investment in local industries and infrastructure, which could create jobs and reduce migration pressures. Destinations. So, where are Africans migrating to today? The answer, like the issue itself, is multifaceted. While Europe remains a popular destination, particularly for those from North Africa, new migration patterns are emerging. The United States, Canada, and Australia are attracting skilled professionals and students. Within Africa itself, countries like South Africa, Ghana, and Kenya are witnessing an influx of migrants seeking better opportunities within the continent. Each destination presents its own set of challenges and opportunities. Migrants often face linguistic barriers, cultural differences, and the ever-present threat of discrimination. Yet, many persevere, driven by the hope of a better future for themselves and their families. To understand why Africans often migrate to Europe and the likes, we need to take a trip back in time. The history of African migration to the West is a story of shifting policies, economic needs, and changing perceptions. In the post-World War II era, European countries, desperate to rebuild their economies, welcomed African guest workers with open arms. But as economic prosperity returned and anti-immigrant sentiments grew, those doors began to close. Stricter immigration policies were enacted, making it increasingly difficult for Africans to legally migrate. The irony, of course, is that many of these policies were put in place by the same countries that had benefited from decades of African labor. This historical context is crucial because it reveals a pattern of shifting attitudes and policies that continue to shape the migration landscape today. Faced with this complex issue, governments around the world are grappling with how to manage migration flows. Some have opted for stricter border controls and stricter visa requirements, while others are exploring more compassionate approaches. The African Union, for example, is pushing for greater freedom of movement within the continent. The idea is to promote intra-African trade and development, allowing people to move more freely in search of opportunities. But real solutions require a more holistic approach. Investing in education, healthcare, and job creation in Africa is crucial. So too is addressing the root causes of conflict and instability that drive people from their homes. What's needed is a long-term commitment from both African governments and the international community to create real change. This means investing in education, infrastructure, healthcare, and job creation. It also means tackling corruption and ensuring foreign investments benefit the local economy, not just a few elites. Westerners must also speak up against anti-immigration policies since we all share the global space. No human is illegal. Until then, millions will continue to risk their lives for a shot at a better life elsewhere. But we must remember that migration isn't just a matter of survival. It's a reflection of the failures of both local and global systems to offer people the opportunities they deserve at home. It's important to break free from the stereotypes around migration and recognize it as a global issue. Migration is a worldwide activity, not confined to one region or one set of people. It's time to see migration as a shared experience, a movement of people from all walks of life, looking to better their circumstances. So the next time you hear about migration, remember, it's not just one group of people. Migration is a global two-way exchange, and it's something that affects all of us, no matter where we're from. Let's open our minds and see migration for what it really is, a movement of people from all corners of the globe seeking opportunity, freedom, and a better life. Migration is a human story, a story of hope, survival, and sometimes despair. But it's a story we must face together. It's time for the world to address the root causes of migration and create the conditions for people to stay and thrive in their own countries. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insights into global issues. And if you've experienced migration yourself, share your story in the comments below.